Welcome to the Darkstream, VoxDay, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. As promised, tonight is Stupid Question Day, so I hope that you have prepared your questions and we can address them. Things are going pretty well. Got the machines in, got the spaces reserved. Got some new leathers arranged. We're going to be ordering something like, I don't know, 4,000 new cowhides, which are really exciting. If you're excited by that sort of thing, of course. And Unauthorized is doing well, thanks to all of you who have already renewed or made new subscriptions. We're already 30% of the way to where we'd like to be, and that's a great start. They're going to get the video uploads working very soon, which means that the amount of new content is going to rapidly start increasing again, and we'll be able to start bringing some of the things that we're planning to do on as well. So it's all good. And I've actually been messing around a bit with some of those music AI programs, just seeing what they can do in different genres and whatever. I've reached the conclusion that modern pop is already composed by AI. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. But first, I actually have a reminder. For those of you who haven't seen it before, this is the trailer, and the paperbacks have all shipped, and the hardcovers should be shipping this weekend, next week, as soon as they get to the warehouse. This is, of course, the Ghost of the Badlands from Razorfist. So obviously, April 17th has passed. The good news is that we got our act together, and it's now shipping, and paperbacks are going out to everybody, tracking numbers, etc., etc. And that means that as soon as we get those done, then we can start shipping out Alt Hero Q, Midnight's War, and so forth. So all good. So does anyone have any questions yet? We've only got a few people here so far, but perhaps a few of them have some questions. Akabear tells us the audio and video are good. Yeah, if there's no questions, I can just fire up some tunes that previously did not exist and yet sound weirdly familiar. All right. Well, since we have no stupid questions, this is actually a good sort of stupid question day. So, what I started experimenting with was some of this. Like, I wanted to see how it did with like the light dance pop sort of thing. So I put together some just basic going out club hopping type lyrics, and then I put them into the two different systems. And I think it's really interesting. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear where the biases are. You know, the one system is more melodic, but it's also considerably more uncontrolled. I mean, first of all, you don't have as much option to control what you've got. You know, so things get a little bit more random. But it's definitely more melodic, and it's also much more electronic. So anyhow, check it out. This one is the Suno system, and like I said, it sounds almost exactly like a lot of the generic pop that you hear these days, which is why I've heard actually that there is one major record label that is already creating a lot of music this way. So, hey, John Bradley's here. John, I'm going to be very interested to get your opinion of this. This is, I put together just some cheesy, I took the same basic structure and put it into the two different AI systems with the intention of doing like some cheesy dance stuff. So, okay, so this one is the Suno system.
We've got the now.
It's actually got a pretty good dance beat. It's got that sort of summer Ibiza thing going on.
She's looking good tonight. The music's getting nearer. It's alright, it's alright, it's alright. The sun is going down. The lights are coming on. It's time to hit the town. It's alright, it's alright, it's alright. You're looking good and so am I. Nobody knows the reason why. It's time to go and hit the town. The music's bumping all around. It's alright, we got nothing night. I just want to go tonight. All night, it's alright, we got the night. We got the night.
More of that. What's interesting is that it has a really sort of Spanish nightclub vibe to it for some reason. I can't tell you why, but so that's the Suno system. Now here's the Udio system, and it has a bit of a more. This is the one that works better with like producing guitars and rock type stuff. But again, the melodies are not as strong in general. Good bass though.
Nearer, it's alright, it's alright. The sun is going down, the lights are coming on. It's time to hit the town. It's alright, it's alright. It's alright. We've got the night. I just wanna flow. I just wanna flow tonight. It's alright. We've got the night. I just wanna roll. I just wanna roll tonight.
So, you know, that's somebody says got a bit of a thriller vibe. I haven't picked that up myself, but that's interesting. Um, Rachel would be willing to roller skate to that. Lounge vibes. Yeah, that one's not as you know going out to a Spanish nightclub as the other one. It's actually probably a better song in some ways, but it wouldn't be as popular on the dance floor and stuff, I don't think. Anyhow, it's really interesting to see how well those systems are working, just in terms of generating ideas. They're you can't effectively put together an entire song. I've heard like some of the best examples that they have to offer, and you know, it's impressive, but having worked with it now, I, I think it might actually take less time to simply learn how to strum a guitar and do a basic, um, folk type song, because that's the kind of stuff that people have been able to produce a whole structured song with in general. Um, but it's definitely getting there. They're Udio in particular is making um, significant strides in trying to allow you to sort of do basic editing. I think what's ultimately going to happen, and John, this will probably be of interest to you. I think it's pretty obvious that this stuff is going to start getting incorporated into the digital audio workstation software. I can easily see, um, some of the big packages that utilize it. What's the one? What's the one we use? Reaper. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't an option, if there weren't tools allowing you to start using it and incorporating it and editing it in Reaper pretty soon. So, hey John, are you back in musical action yet? I was just curious. I know you were out of action for a bit, so let me know. We've got a couple questions here. I will address them. When is the analysis of the China war games? They're pretty much ready, so I'll probably take the weekend to polish it up a bit and do it next week, would be my guess. Super chat. We don't have super chats operative yet. It's going to be a little while. We'll get them back. There's some issues to address in that regard. We'll figure it out. So, in fact, that gives me an idea of how we can handle it. I'll probably probably talk to one of the devs tonight, because I had an idea how it might work. So we'll see. Euro 2024 predictions, is Italy winning again? I think that's unlikely. I don't think that they're one of the favorites this time. A couple other good players have aged out. And right now, probably man for man, the strongest team looks like England. But England does have a tendency to choke at the tournaments. If you look at how they've got Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham, Saka, they've got a very sound defense with Kyle Walker in the back. I mean, it's not a very English team, but they've got. I think they've got Declan Rice. I don't think he plays for Ireland. I think he plays for England. Ben, what's his name? Ben Ford or whatever, who plays for Manchester City. They've got a really excellent team, but the Germans do have a tendency to come in and they do have a tendency to come in and just show up and dominate. So, can they do it again this year? We'll see. My understanding is that Germany is actually pretty weak this tournament season, but we'll see. If I had to pick a team that I think is most likely to win it, I think it would probably be England. But I don't think there's a strong favorite this time around. What general advice would you give to an 8-year-old new soccer player. That's easy. Always move to the open space. One drill that I taught the kids who were about that age, I spent 1 year as the assistant coach of what they call the Scuola Calcio, which is the 6 to 8-year-olds. And then I spent 3 years coaching it. 4 actually, with quite a bit of success. And the most important thing I taught them, and the single most useful drill that we had, was teaching the kids to run to the ball, and then if the other person was going to get there first, the other player had to break away at a 45-degree angle. And I did that every single practice. And the kids really learned it. And it gave our team a big advantage because at that age, they're still tending to clump together. That's where you see the big mass all moving around the ball. So the fact that our team never did that, we never had more than one person on the ball, was a huge advantage because there was always somebody to pass it to. Now, often they couldn't kick it far enough to get to the player in the open space, but they had the right idea. You could see how things were coming along. And then as they got older, as they were 7 and 8, they were just crushing other teams that didn't have any idea how to move without the ball. So movement without the ball to an open space, maintaining a line to the ball. What I mean by a line to the ball is there's no opposing player in between you and the ball. We were playing a very good team last week, and it was just difficult because I was playing on the wing in the first half, and then the second half they moved me to attacker or striker. And so I was trying to keep the pressure off our midfield by pressing the defenders when they're bring the ball up. And it was kind of maddening because they were such a good passing team, and the reason that they were so effective was, I'm pretty good at pressing when I can keep my energy up. I'm pretty good at pressing because what I always focus on doing is cutting off the angle, the most optimal angle to pass. I make sure that when I'm rushing in, I'm always rushing in with a player directly behind me. Well, what their defenders were smart enough to do is that after they would pass off, they wouldn't just stand where they were, and they wouldn't move forward like most teams do, which would allow the other striker or the midfielders to cover them. They would always step back. And so I would come in pressing, blocking the path to where the guy was, and then they could just pass it back right to the guy who had moved back. Now, they're a very intelligent team. In fact, the guy who was anchoring their defense was a former star player for our club who actually coached Ender and other young guys at our club. So he really knows what he's doing, and it was it was really irritating. I did manage to block 1 or 2 passes, and I did manage to almost get a goal off of an interception, but generally they were the most difficult team to press that I think I've ever played. So moving to the open space and keeping a line open to the person with the ball, you do those 2 things and you're going to become an effective player, even if you don't have much in the way of ball skill. Any advice on how to read Aristotle? Take your time. Take your time. What you don't want to do, you can't skim it. This was very difficult for someone like me. I'm used to reading very, very rapidly. It's not actually skimming, but with Aristotle, it turns into skimming because you can't necessarily process the information as quickly as you can read it. And so, just instead of, I'm not saying do a full exegesis on a single sentence or anything, but take your time, read through it once, and if you feel like you didn't understand it, don't hesitate to read it through 2 or 3 more times. And then if you don't get it, just take a break. It's kind of funny. There was one passage that I don't remember which book it was. I don't think it was Rhetoric, but just I'm reading it, and I read it again. And I just can't make sense of the passage. And then I finally read the footnote, and the footnote says something like, the translation was incomplete, and this sentence doesn't actually make any sense as far as we can tell. I was so relieved because with Aristotle, there's just with the words that he's using, and sometimes the complexity of the structure of his sentences, sometimes it's difficult to comprehend. I mean, when you're reading Aristotle, you have the privilege of reading one of the greatest minds in human history. And so don't be impatient. Don't get frustrated. And if you just don't get it after 3 or 4 tries, don't worry about it. Move on to the next bit. It's not going to do you any harm, and you're not going to grok the fullness of Aristotle anyhow. I don't think anyone does. And just see what you can glean from it. I mean, for crying out loud, I got pretty much an entire book, plus another book, plus essentially a justification for my core philosophy from 2 sentences in Rhetoric. That was really, really eye-opening to me. I can still remember the first time that I read it in Spain, and I was out by the pool, and it just really hit me hard when I realized the significance of it, the fact that somebody had observed all that time ago that you can't, you just can't talk to some people. You can't reason with some people. It is totally impossible to convince some people through dialectic, through information. If you had a new baby boy, what would you name him? I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question because generally speaking, when it comes to names, approximately my first 32 choices are vetoed by Space Bunny. So, I don't know. I usually tend to go for, I think the best solution is usually go with a traditional name from the culture, language, ethnicity of the father's last name. Names are always much more coherent and consistent, and I think it's a lot easier for people to accept their identities and not have identity problems if they have a coherent name. So Yordamon has an announcement. Anyone that was having trouble with the footer covering the chat, reload the page. It should be fixed. Apologies for the screw up. I wanted Aragorn, but Veto was Swift. Well, I think you want to be cautious about pop cultural names. There's probably a number of kids named Aragorn and Legolas who absolutely hate their parents now. I mean, you know, maybe you would have enjoyed being called Skywalker or Darth Vader, but most kids would hate it, and it would have led to years and years of tormenting in their younger years. You know, as always, don't be cute, don't be clever. You know, the kid is going to have to bear the name for a long time. So, you know, make it something that's, something that's not cute, something that's not clever, something that's not timely. There was a cornerback in the NFL draft named Kool-Aid. Yeah, I mean, pretty much you generally want to go in the exact opposite direction of American black culture when it comes to names. That being said, I did tell Space Bunny that I kind of regretted the fact that we never considered the name Equanimous for any of our children. Because I do firmly believe that Equanimous St. Brown is one of the greatest names in human history. The funny thing is, his brother, Amon-Ra St. Brown, is actually a really good player, I think, for the Detroit Lions. But yeah, you have to be impressed by Miss St. Brown's nomenclature with she's responsible for both Equanimous and Amon-Ra. So certainly, I'm guessing she's a little bit more literary than the average, Black American mother. So, and certainly a lot more athletic than the average. I mean, 2 sons in the NFL. That's pretty impressive. How do you think the SSH will change storytelling, movie making, etc.? Well, I think it will take a long time before it starts to have any impact. I mean, it doesn't even directly affect my storytelling very much. It is funny how much our storytelling tendencies are shaped by what we see and by what we read. I was going in a certain direction in the story of A Throne of Bones when I suddenly realized, why am I doing this? I don't like this. This is not the sort of story that I want to tell. But I was allowing my cultural and literary influences unconsciously guide the direction of the story. Now, you always need to be careful when you're, getting purposeful rather than inspired, because you don't want to get pedantic. Apparently, there was a third St. Brown brother, Osiris. He was good enough to play at Stanford, but didn't make the NFL. However, he's probably doing fine if he was smart enough to get into Stanford. Even as an athlete, he's obviously smarter than the average bear. So, but yeah, that's quite the set of names there. Anyhow, where I think the SSH is going to be useful is for people who want to make their characters more complete and realistic. They can also provide sound motivations where the motivations are not necessarily apparent. Like, for example, Wormtongue's motivation is a little bit on the weak side. Why is Wormtongue Wormtongue? We don't know. You know, we know that he lusts after Eowyn. We know that Saruman has promised him Eowyn as his reward. But, you know, if the guy's name was Wormtongue already, you know, Grima Wormtongue, he presumably was already like that before even meeting Eowyn and before working for Saruman. So why was he such a Weasley little evil advisor? How did he manage to worm himself into that position, etc., etc.? That's where the SSH, I think, can come in handy, because it provides the creator with a basic template for what the character's behavior should be. It provides some parameters and behavioral patterns that, you know, once you've defined the guy as a delta, once you've defined the guy as a bravo, it gives you an idea of who the character is. And that's incredibly useful when you are, you know, dealing with the problem of the blank page. You know, who is this guy? What does he do? Well, you know, now when you're starting, you can say, okay, this is his name. He's a delta. And then instantly you have lots of ideas for how he should relate to other people. He's a delta. So what does that mean? Well, there's probably a female character that he's got some one-itis for. Maybe he's married. Maybe he's not, but you already know he's not going to be, you know, the obvious big hero. He's not going to have women throwing at himself in every port, etc., etc. And even if they did, he would be horrified. Cliff Cosmic notes, it'll be great for ensemble casts. Well, yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, a lot of ensemble casts already kind of recognize the SSH, or they kind of reflect the SSH unconsciously. They don't understand it, they don't know it, but because the SSH articulates what's actually there, their attempts to mimic the world, even in a imaginary way, is going to naturally contain some aspects of the SSH. So hopefully we'll have the book done here in reasonably short order. I think that we should be able to fire up a Kickstarter sometime in June for both Hypergamouse, the Hypergamouse book and the Sigma game book, but we'll see. I haven't been too impressed by the traffic. You know, Sigma game got off to a great start, but it's been kind of hanging around, I don't know, 3,700 subs, about 12,000 views. It hasn't really grown very much, which is fine. You know, I mean, it is what it is. It's a little bit disappointing given how heavy the interest in the concept of the Sigma is, you know, as a cultural touchstone. Zach says, I don't expect studios to be able to incorporate SSH by the time they are aware of it. Yeah, but the thing is that someone's going to. And someone's going to have a big success when they do, because of the way that it will, the way that it will reflect the human condition. Zach says, the public understanding will be boiled down to everybody I don't like is Gamma. Possibly, but that doesn't matter, because the number of people that are involved in writing relevant books or making any sort of movie or TV series is very, very small. And, you know, even if they're ticket takers and even if they're awful people, they do tend to be smarter than the norm, and you're all it's not going to be some generic what's his name, Chuck Lorre type. It's not going to be the kind of guy who does a Big Bang or Young Sheldon type show. It's going to be somebody more like the guy who did the recent Fall of the House of Usher. And he'll have a lot of success with it. I haven't seen the Fall of the House of Usher, but it was really impressive. I really like the concept of it. I don't know if I'll ever bother watching it, but I really like the concept of it, in that he essentially turned the ticket taking and attached it to that being the reason for the Fall of the House of Usher, and then used all of the classic Poe stories, the Mask of the Red Death, the Telltale Heart, maybe even the Cask of Amontillado, I don't know. But he turned those into episodes that were all linked by virtue of the ticket-taking deal that the Usher family had made. I think Big Bear sent it to me, and it's really pretty fascinating. Let me see if I can see if it works on this one. See if I can find it. Okay, yeah, I think that works. Let's see here.
I said you get all.
I'm gonna put this on so I can hear it. It's very short, don't worry. Very short and very low res. Let's see here.
Whole thing, and the price is deferred. Let the next generation foot the bill. So that's the deal.
Here we go.
You get. I said you get all that, the whole thing, and the price is deferred. Let the next generation foot the bill. So that's the deal. You get the whole world, and when you're done, at the end of it all, just before you would have died, Roderick, just before you would have died, anyway, your bloodline dies with you. Every Usher that exists today, and every Usher yet to be born, they will live a blessed, privileged life and depart the stage together. It's an offer on the table. What do you say? I'd say that's a good deal.
I'd say that's a done deal.
Then say it.
You have a deal.
You too, Cleopatra. You too.
You have a deal.
Tonight, we'll just...
So, you would think that they were baby boomers or something, given their total lack of concern for their progeny. I mean, it's kind of chilling to watch that as a member of Gen X, knowing that a third of my generation was aborted, knowing that the baby boomers are likely to leave very, very little to our generation, et cetera, et cetera. Because you see that and you think, well, who would ever do that? Who would ever take that deal? And then you realize, like, it seems like an entire generation did. They don't care if the United States survives past them, because they knew, they didn't know when Jesus was going to come back, but they knew it was going to be in their lifetimes, because obviously once they're done, the world ends. And it's not a good deal. It's a terrible deal. It's a literally satanic deal. And, it does give you some insight, however. And I think it's interesting. The guy who wrote it and produced and created it, he did do, he's an atheist, but it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up becoming a Christian, because he clearly has a decent grasp on the nature of evil. He's the guy who did the it's called like Midnight Mass or something like that, where this priest goes off to the Middle East, and he comes back, and he's he's helping cure people, but it turns out that he's a vampire. And it was really well done. It was not quite correct from a Christian perspective, of course, because, atheist. But it was actually a reasonably intelligent take. It wasn't just... the point was not to make fun of or mock or otherwise caricature Christianity. The point was to delve into some of the questions of temptation, which obviously is of significant interest to this guy. Yeah, the Ushers run a massive pharma company. I mean, that's why I said, this guy's literally making movies about evil pharma companies and ticket takers. How much longer is it going to take before he figures out that the only defense against all that stuff is Jesus Christ? It'll be interesting to see when he gets to the Lord, I believe, help my unbelief stage. But, and of course, it's possible that he's a bit of a ticket taker himself, given that he's, but again, even the people who know the most about it say that even in the heart of the Hellmouth, 10% of the people there are just genuine talents who are not, who are essentially left alone once they refuse to take the ticket, because, the Hellmouth, being parasitic, needs genuine talent to feed off of. And the more talented you are, this is just actually, let me back off. I suspect that the more talented you are, the less inclined you are to take the ticket. Just like with this AI music, I'm the one who is messing around and playing with it and figuring out how to use it, because I can't do it without it. That's not entirely true. I have written and recorded an entire song by painstakingly programming all the keyboards and that sort of thing. But, I'm just never going to pick up a guitar or sit down on the keyboard and start a song that way. I'm guessing John hasn't even bothered playing with this stuff at all, because why would he? He can already do all that stuff himself. Not that I'm saying using AI music is taking the ticket in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that there's an analogy there that might help explain why some people take it and why others turn it down. And I can see too where people like Big Bear, who, if he wasn't being constantly crippled and hamstrung, he would be much, much more successful than he is today. He's constantly, kicked off of platforms, not allowed to perform in clubs, etc., etc. If they just left him alone, forget the ticket, forget giving him any advantages. If they just left him alone, he'd be probably a top 15, maybe even a top 10 comic. But, and he'd be doing movies and all this kind of stuff. But it's not viable. I mean, in a different context, I'd be somebody who was, in some sort of the Wang Hunin official ideologist position. I'm not. I'm fine without it. I'm absolutely fine with how things are. But I don't crave that sort of thing either. And thoughts about the first humans being giants? I think it's a little bit unlikely given what we know about gravity and that's whatever that square law is about. You make things a little bigger, a little heavier, and they just don't work as well. It's possible. I mean, certainly there's some evidence that there have been giants living in the earth, even more recently than people would imagine. I mean, it's kind of crazy seeing some of those pictures, but which you assume that they're fake, but maybe they're not. I thought it was just a Muslim thing, but John C. Wright cited it too. No, there's a number of different theories related to that. Some of them related to religion, some not. But, I mean, even with the Indians, there were some legends about tall, red-haired cannibal giants that had been wiped out by, I think it was the Navajo, but possibly the Pueblo. One of those southwestern American tribes had wiped them out not long before the white man arrived. So there's something going on. The Vikings were pretty big. They were big, but they weren't giants. I mean, the Vikings are like, about the size that they were now. It was, and also it's really shocking when you go to the British Museum to see how small the knights were. They're all like 5'4". It was really kind of remarkable to see that. Speaking of knights, I saw Henry VIII's armor, and I'm going to have to post on the blog because I did read a fascinating theory about the oppression of the monasteries being related to more of an anti-Habsburg action than anything relating to religion in any way, shape, or form. So that's something interesting, I think, to look into. But it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. I mean, the fact that dinosaur bones can't be displayed, and nobody's allowed to touch them because they're radioactive or something. I mean, when I read about that, I thought it was a joke. I seriously thought it was some kind of joke until I looked it up. It's like, yeah, there's something completely off here. And I'm hoping, I hope that some of the truth about the world will be coming out reasonably soon, whether it's related to Antarctica, whether it's China and Russia depantsing whoever is behind Clown World for the benefit of the human race. It would just be good to know. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some pretty unpleasant aspects of the knowledge, but if it is, it already is. Better we know than don't, in my opinion. So, I mean, none of it changes. It's always funny to me that people are like, well, we can't let anyone know or it'll shake their faith and this and that and the other thing. It's like, but it won't. People who say that sort of thing don't understand the first thing about religious faith. I mean, the problem with religious faith is usually being fat, safe, and happy. That is the fastest way to convince someone that there isn't a God, other than them being very attracted to someone and then being informed that God is the reason that you can't have that person. That's probably the fastest way to convert somebody to atheism. But anyhow, well, that's all I've got for tonight. So the Conehead people too. Yeah, I mean, it's all related to that stuff. It's a lot more complicated, and the human race is not just a single race, a single species, and there's all kinds of influences on us that, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it turned out that something akin to elves, something akin to orcs, and so forth, were all actually existed at some point in the past on the earth. So anyhow, if you haven't subscribed yet, please be sure to do so at some point in time. We will create for those of you who have subscribed to the Darkstream, we will come up with a Darkstream icon, which hopefully eventually we'll have here, not just on Unauthorized, but not just on Social Galactic, but also here in the chat. And have a good week. I expect to stream here again on Friday, and I haven't heard yet from John, but we should, in theory, be doing Archaven Nights tomorrow, and we've got a lot to talk about for Archaven Nights, as you know if you've been on the blog. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.